What we have for you right now is something really special. We have both Daniela and Artis that are going to talk to you about early success, not early alerts. And this is really going to transform how you approach to do student success. And it's really exciting. It's talking about taking how traditionally things have been done in a very reactive nature and transitioning that to one that is more proactive. So really excited for you to hear what they have for you. So I'll stop talking and I'll give it to them. Yep.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. So again, So one of the things that I want to follow up on Brendan's, please make sure that you sign the big sign. It's actually something that we want to share with you afterwards. We want to take a couple of pictures of it. So the great attendance here, this past couple of days, please sign your name in there. We want to immortalize that you are here. And then keep that for our keepsake. Take some pictures with it as well. All right, so we're going to get started.
I think this slide's really for me. If you guys don't know who Artis is by now, you might be at the wrong conference. So yeah, I'm Daniela. I'm a senior engagement strategist here at Element. My job is really to help partners like you optimize your CRM usage. So I focus a lot on adoption and retention, and I also head up our professional services division. So we provide some consulting services, marketing strategy, training, additional hours, and additional help if you all need that. I've got a marketing background. I spent about 7 years on a campus as part of a digital marketing team where I started in social media, and that really evolved into content marketing, digital marketing, and then I went dark side. And now I'm on the ed tech side, working with artists and helping you all understand your marketing strategies and how to use your CRM to meet your goals more efficiently. So hello, thank you for having me.
All right, so I'm going to borrow that clicker from you.
Yes, please do.
So Daniela is very understated. She's amazing content strategist, amazing content developer. If you haven't talked to her around audits, getting the most out of CRM, out of Element, talk to Daniela. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight is, as you all are kind of thinking about how to implement certain things in Element, and you want to use best use cases and best practices, this session, or Daniela's team, and she's growing that team, is kind of a direct correlation to what we've been hearing from you. We are a technology company first, but we're hearing over and over again, hey, we need a little bit more. We need you to tell us some of the best practices. Hence, Daniela is here, and that's why we kind of stole her from some other agencies, which is, it's been pretty good.
Shall not be named.
So today we're going to focus on a couple of things: student success, right, and early alerts versus students. So when you think about student success, what comes to mind? So outcomes. I mean, that's success. Outcomes. Maybe engagement. Student success and engagement, like they go hand in hand together. How about retention? Student success, I always think of retention. So you have the admission side and you have the retention side, right? And then, of course, graduation. It's like, hey, we want these folks to graduate and kind of get out of here so they can kind of get a return on their investment, and we can make sure that we're kind of helping more of those students. But it's all of the above, right? So it's all of the above. It means a lot of different things, but you have to do all those things in order to kind of have a successful student outcomes, right? So in our student success platform. So what we did here is what you see all the signs. This is actually a session that we did with Durham Tech over 6 months ago at their campus. I think Abe mentioned something during yesterday's presentation or the panel where we went in and we're trying to understand what are the different factors and kind of all of the different things that students and services and how they all kind of fit together, and how do you think about outcomes and how do you think about student success where you have so many different institutional departments and people who are touching that. So how do you think about all of that stuff? And most of the time we understood over and over that there is always a human in the loop. It's like, oh, the process is this student has to set up an appointment with this person in order to get something cleared, in order to find out about something. They have a question, they need to get approval for something. So it's always a human in the loop. If they are not doing something, then you have a faculty member kind of raising a flag and saying, hey, this student pointing that out, they need to do something. So there's always that human in the loop, right? And that's really what we call kind of the alerts, right? So those are the alert systems. The early alert systems are really built around that idea that you're identifying what circumstances for an event, and then you have behaviors or lack thereof that can provide an early indication of need. And then, when that student is at risk, then there's a necessity for an intervention and engagement by the institution. So this is kind of the model of early alerts. You're essentially providing a signal, right, in order to signify to that student that they need some kind of help. But the human is always in the loop, right? And we all know how faculty members are how helpful they are. Of course, that's their job to educate the students, but they tend to fall behind. They think about administrative tasks. So they're basically switchboard operators. So this is kind of an old model. They're kind of switching things and flipping switches, right? Those early alerts are all about flipping those switches. And of course, we can take it high tech a little bit more, and you can think about it in digital format, but it's still that human in the loop. Always the human in the loop that's doing that. So we're, of course, in Element, we want to accomplish a lot of these different use cases for Element, the different use cases of, hey, how do I take an early alert workflow and now fit it into Element? And then we're going to go a little bit further than that. We're going to showcase not only alerts, the use case, but also more proactive and how we think about the evolution of the success and early success approach when you have a unified platform like Element that's able to do a lot more automation, a lot more proactivity. So the way that this session is going to work is that we're going to talk a little bit, a couple of slides to kind of contextualize it and how that workflow fits in, and then Daniela is going to go through the use case and kind of showcase that in real world example in here.
Yeah. Let's dive into it, right? Because that sounds pretty good. You want to be proactive. You want a human in the middle. You want a high-touch interaction. But you all don't work 24/7, right? So yeah, I can see people nodding. And you don't want to work 24/7. So let's take a look at like a use case that might be pretty typical for student success. You've got a student who's maybe flagged for showing low attendance. They've missed a couple of classes, or maybe they're missing assignments, right? And you want to get them back on track, and you want to be proactive about this. So you want to automate communication. You want to automate your assignments and your tasks. You want it to work, so you want to track what's happening, and you want to work smarter, not harder. So what that really looks like here is what we're going to do is we're going to build a journey, and I'm going to walk you through a journey in Element that does that. If you attended Megan's session, and I know she's doing a workshop tomorrow, so if you want to learn more about journeys, then dive into it. But you know that a journey is a visualization of somebody moving through sequential steps. And these sequential steps in Element are really important, right? Because you want to see where they've been, where they are, and what comes next. So we're going to build a journey that has automated those communications, letting that student know, hey, we've noticed that you've missed your classes or you're missing assignments. We're paying attention, right? We're going to move them to meet in person, to book appointments with us so that we can get them back on track. And then we're going to get them to sign off on an academic success plan. So it's really getting that buy-in. And we're going to automate that, and we're going to work pretty smart here. So we'll jump into the journey, and maybe I should...
Wow, that's a lot.
Dive in. I know, it is a lot, right?
We left all of the best stuff for last.
Yeah, right? It's nice. This session kind of ties together everything that we've talked about these last 2 days. So not to toot my own horn, but it really, we did bring it today, artists.
Yes,
so, yeah.
yes.
So when you go into your journey here, there's a couple of things that I want to point out. The first is you've got your basic settings here, but this conversion window is actually a really good opportunity for everybody. This is basically the duration of time it takes for a person to move through the steps that you've set up. And what I encourage folks here to do is be really aggressive with this. I set it to a month. You'll see there's a lot of steps and a lot of groups here, but you're responsible for this student's success, right? So be as aggressive as you want here and make sure that you're getting them back on track. I know Megan talked about triggers, but the idea here is that you can enroll segments, anybody who meets your criterias. So I'll just jump right to the steps. I really like how we grouped this, and this goes back to those 3 orange boxes that you saw on the last slide here, but we've grouped them. The first group is your automated communications. Hey, you've based on the criteria we've set, you've met the trigger that now we're scheduling a message to you that says we're noticing that you're at risk, that you've missed classes, and our call to action there is to get you to sign up to meet with a student success coach, right? And you can see that we've built this in here. I'll just pull this up here, that your step trigger is once they've scheduled an appointment. And you can set the conditions to say, this is the type of the appointment, this is the category of the appointment that I want them to make, right? So you can really watch and see what they've been doing.
This is so cool because as a marketer, right, as somebody who's did a lot of this, journey mapping is super complex.
Yes.
It's very complex, and having the tools and having the right triggers and setting everything up the way you want it. So because Element is driven by events, and now we've expanded that to have custom events and all kinds, every tool that we do, there's signals around that. So you can listen for each one of those signals, and you can say if one of the signals is true, or if many of the, if all of them have to be true, or only a couple of them, in order to move the student through these different steps. So this is super cool because you know, it kind of lays all of that stuff out. It's bringing all of those pieces together.
And you, as the professionals in your industry and in the department that you're working in, you know what that criteria is. You know enough to know what puts a student at risk, right? So you can set that criteria ahead of time and make sure that you're getting the right students in this plan. So we've got those automated messages. We're pushing them to meet with a person, you know, we're pushing them to meet with their advisor, and then we're encouraging them to sign off at every check-in point. So we've got a form that we have built in. You can either review that form with that student in person. You can automate that, but making sure that they have taken an action to complete that next step so that they're going farther and farther through their journey. And then the way they end is when they've signed off on that success plan that you have developed for them. So then they exit the trigger and you know, hey, this student or this number of students have gone through this plan. This is what's successful for them, or this is not what's successful for them. Before I sort of kick it back to Artis, I'm going to take the liberty here to share some best practices, and I'm going to plug my workshop tomorrow on campaigns because it's who I am, and I'll share some best practices on these communications that we built for these students. So we've got an automated series here, but a couple of things that I want to point out. You heard a lot about text messaging these last few days. I think our friends at Wake Tech, with Devin, I think he's in the room, yes, even mentioned on the panel how much more engagement the texts get from email. So Element's really cool. You can have variations of the same message in one spot. So I always encourage our clients and our partners to check both email and SMS, especially for messages like this that you want to get out ahead with the students. If you don't take anything else from today, and I didn't clear this with Artis, so he may disagree, but subject lines and preview lines, emojis work, and so do personalization. So if you're writing an email, use an emoji that uses color, because it's going to stand out. It's going to increase your open rates by something crazy, like 7 to 10%. I don't know why, I don't know how, but the research is there. And then personalization. So being sure to use your first name tokens, letting that student know, hey, we know you, and we're paying attention to you, right? Same thing with the body of content here, making sure that you've got your first name, that you're mentioning the course that they're missing, that they're at risk for. And then I always get questions about calls to actions and links. So a lot of times people will ask, is an inline link better? Is a button better? What's the best thing to do? Use both. There's no harm in using both, especially if it's one call to action and one email, which I strongly recommend too. But if you're going to choose one, use a button, and that's because think of your thumb scrollers, right? It's a lot easier to click on a big blue button to book an appointment than it is to pinch and zoom and try to find the line. So a nice, clear call to action here and some nice personalization there. It's coming directly from the professor. I also just want to call out another couple of things that Element just does really well. Copying the parents, dun dun dun, and the guardian email. EAB did a study, I think in fall of 2022, that said 3 out of 4 parents want to be included on their student communications. And this is really gonna help when it comes to student success, right? You got helicopter parents, you got parents who maybe aren't helicopter parents and don't know what's going on inside the classroom. So if you've got those parent and family guardian relationships set up in Element, this is low-hanging fruit to help you get that student success back on track.
Daniela, one more thing about that. So not everybody is going to be at that level where they're,
Yes.
they're 40-year-old and their mom is actually telling them to not miss their classes. but
You never know.
You never know. But one of the nice things is that all of our records have record assignees, and usually those are the counselors that have been assigned to that person. So you can use an assignee here so that the counselor gets a message or an email gets CC'd on those alerts every single time that they get automated out of the system. So that's another way to think about that.
Yeah, that's
CCing part.
a great idea. And there's a token for that too. Yep. When it comes to the text message options too, again, that personalization, making sure you're referring to them by the first name, and then building in that URL, that call to action that will directly link them to that appointment site. It's gonna make a big difference too. All right, now you can go back to Artis.
All right, so we talked about early alerts, right? And that's how you can kind of build those early alert journeys and triggers in Element. But then, it's like you think about early success, it's like, okay, that students, they really need to receive more of that proactive guidance, right? They need to receive a lot more of those communications, and you're mapping their journey a lot earlier. So this is more reacting to their signals and how things are going, whereas, we think about success, we want to be more proactive. And remember what Corinne said today, it's, pop quiz, what did she say? So what was the one where it says clarity equals security? So we have to have clarity, right? So clarity in communications, clarity around their journey, what the expectations are. If those are clear ahead of time, then you're going to have a lot better success in terms of meeting that student's security or that family or whoever is on the other side. They feel more secure and more confident. They're able to do that better. So in this case, what we talk about is kind of receiving guidance from you at the right time when they need it, and then whenever in whatever communication channel they prefer. Daniela showed SMS and an email here, but of course, they can come through chat as well, or some other channel as well, or they can come to the office or phone calling. We introduced phone calling as well, so we can record all those things in there. And then of course, it's whatever topic they need, right? We can't limit it to just the things that we feel are important to them. So they need to kind of come back to us and say, hey, this is important to me. So as we think about that, like we talked a lot about BoltBot today, and we talk about the AI and how all these tools are kind of fitting into this whole student journey. So we want it to be push, but that's early alert, right? It's like, hey, we know that you're kind of messing up, so we're not really giving you any clarity or any guidance on what you're doing wrong or how to proactively do it. So mobile and kind of students living on their phones right now, we have to make sure that we're celebrating their successes as well. And that's exactly kind of the things that we're talking about. And of course, us not being there after 5 p.m. puts a lot of barriers and a lot of thinking or a lot of anxiety on the other side. To be honest, when you think about it, it's a lot of students, and we hear this a lot, and we talk to folks as well. And I think Corinne again mentioned about something about that student. She didn't want to ask somebody if she should bring the parents in, right? And that was so important because I'm a first generation. I'm an immigrant, first generation college student, so I didn't want my parents on anything, of course. So I so relate with that conversation, but I had no idea what to expect, right? I don't know what to expect in college. So having, and I was embarrassed to ask, because it's like, of course, some certain cultures, you're supposed to know, otherwise you feel stupid and so on and so forth. So asking a bot or asking someone who you feel like is not a human on the other side that's not going to judge you it's actually increases conversion, increases engagement so much. So just having the ability to know, it's like, hey, this is an automated, or this is something that you're not going to be judged, and it's going to increase that tremendously. So it's not about just necessarily the knowledge or the efficiency of it. It's also the psychological problem on the students actually taking that first step in asking that, the psychological safety as well. So after 5 p.m., what they're doing in the context, they need to be able to do that. So we'll go back to another use case here.
Yeah, this is so great. And actually, thank you, Artis, for sharing that story, because let's go back to that student that you flagged for being at risk, right? They've gotten that alert maybe, or maybe they know, they've got a sense that they're not doing well, and they're considering withdrawing or dropping that class, and they need information. They need a decision to make that, right? Our goal here is to provide that real-time guidance on the channel that matters, that they're going to use to help them make an informed decision, and also help them, take action. So what that journey looks like for the student is, all of a sudden they're asking questions, they're gathering information. To Artis's point, should I drop a course? What is the drawback to dropping a course? Do I lose my financial aid? Will I be able to complete my degree, on time? Do my parents need to know? Should I know the answers to this, right? And then based on the information they're gathering on that questions, they're going to take action. And put yourself in that student's shoes, right? They're freaking out, they've got anxiety, maybe they're apathetic, maybe they've reached the point where they don't care anymore, right? So they're not coming from a really good place when they're gonna make this action and this decision. And then they wanna feel good about it, right? So they wanna know, what's the follow-up plan? Who do I talk to? What are the consequences of what I'm doing, right? So that is where BoltBot comes in. I know you've seen a lot, but I do have a demo here, and I'll just show you guys what we've got going on here. But, if I found it, there it is. So here's our bot, and I'll just say okay, I'm a student, I got that at-risk message, Professor Geller is coming for me, I'm freaking out. I'm just gonna go here and say, okay, I don't know, should I drop a class? Did I type that right? Yeah. Yeah, it would know. You're right, Brendan. It would know. And the last couple times I've done this, I have, it's made me feel good about asking if I should drop a class. I'm gonna zoom in. Can you guys see this? Yeah. Okay, all right. So it says the decision to drop a class can depend on various factors such as academic performance, workload, personal circumstances, university policies. I mean, already it's showing empathy, right? I'm freaking out, I don't know what to do, I'm trying to get questions. If you're unsure, it might be beneficial to speak with an academic advisor. Well, that's what that email told me to do anyway. I don't want to go back and find that email. I don't want to find that blue button to make an appointment. Would you like me to schedule an appointment? Well, I would like you to schedule an appointment. And let's see what it does here. And again, to Artis's point about a holistic system that has this built in, because we've got appointments built in, because you've got your student advisors, your academic success coaches built in, what type of appointment are you looking for? Student success planning or an admission interview? Well, this sounds a little more like student success. So I'll go ahead and click that. And all of this is great because this is happening at 10 o'clock at night when you all are in bed, and you don't have to do this, and you can walk in the next morning, see these times, here are the times, here are the dates, let's go ahead and book this meeting, and hey, I'm feeling a little bit better as that student than I was maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago. I think it'll confirm. And generate a link for the appointment. There you go. And then you can go ahead and add that to your calendar. Thank you, BoltBot. Right? I can say, yeah, I should. You should thank your AI. That's a good best practice. You never know.
Thanks, Danielle. I think that was a good use case of how that that can work. So the other part is that we talked about humans being in the loop, and we talked about how we only have a certain amount of bandwidth, and the highest form of interactions that we can have is face to face with somebody. Like we pick up a lot of things, and as humans we're wired to do that, to have engagements face to face. That's the highest form of bandwidth interaction or bandwidth conversation that we can have. Obviously, in digital, you go to video, you go to audio, you go to text, and so on and so forth. So in the absence of us working 24/7 and having a lot of team members, digital first has become very convenient. And like we talked about, people or students don't want to reach out to you because they want to do everything digitally. You want to go through this digital first experience. So our recommendation is that, rather than having a human first and then the human decides, essentially what guiding you or what office to send you to, let the student kind of have that intent. And then one of the things that we saw today during our BoltBot is that we talked a little bit about how you can set up your intents and your intent rules in conversations, and essentially you say, okay, if the intent of those questions is for financial or class, changes or program changes, then trigger off these rules so I can now schedule appointments or I can follow up with those. So having that digital first experience is not only fast, it's also recommended, and it's something that we worked really, really hard on. And of course, this is we've seen a lot of the BoltBot today, but that's essentially what our recommendation is when we think about student success. The other part, it's really important. It's we kind of work in this reactive way, and that's what the early alert model is about. So it's reactive. It's like, okay, something happens and then we kind of send stuff back. Well, what happens if we celebrate things, right? What happens if we're a little bit more proactive on things? We usually kind of follow up on bad stuff all the time. It's like, oh, you're failing in your class. We must see you immediately. You're getting reprimanded. So rather than thinking reactively on things, think about more proactively, right? If we think about, it's like, hey, how are you doing today? We have our birthday pack, which by the way, it's the highest open rates of any communication that you can send out. It's happy birthday message. And is there anything I can do for you? I know that you have a big test coming. Now, these are questions, I know you can do it. These are questions that, or even proactive communications that you're going to be able to set up with Element as we introduce more signals coming in from the LMS around courses and a few other things. So over the next few months, as we work to kind of incorporate those signals in, but you can do that with a lot of other things right now, right? You saw those actions. You can do it for, like I said, birthdays. You can do it for, other types of deadlines, course starting or semester starting. So you can send out a really nice, feel-good welcome email from the counselor, personalized to the counselor saying, hey, semester is starting. Here's some good tips for you. I know you could do it. This is great. And because you have the measure of that person in, you can actually personalize it a little bit more. So sending those proactive communications is a lot better, and it kind of fosters a lot more engagement around that. Of course, we show this, and you can't really do that when you have kind of these desperate systems, right? So at Element, we are thinking, okay, that's the number one reason why we're trying to bring as many tools into Element is essentially, if we have all that data in one place, we don't have to kind of have this round trip on data every other day or every 2 hours or whatever. So things get stale pretty quickly, and then System A, the early alert system, doesn't know that the student engaged with you on conversations. It doesn't know that you dropped a class in your SIS, and now everything is kind of out of sync. And when a student goes to one place, they're really confused, and again, introduces that anxiety part in there. So having systems, and we talked about integrations yesterday, it's so important for us, right? So that's another area that we're focusing a lot on. I mean, this is very familiar, right? It's kind of the platform. This is what we want to do all together. But I'm going to leave these slides. And Daniela, is there any other? So rather than me, again, kind of iterating over those, I'm going to hand it off to Daniela to go through that case management.
Yeah, this is our last one. You guys ready? This is the best one, I think. Yeah, no pressure. So we're going to take that same case from before, that student who's got low attendance, who's missed the series of classes, but instead of automating them and putting them through a journey, we're going to look at the other side of what happens on the administrator side, right? So you as the individual responsible for the student's success, how can you work smarter, not harder, and be more proactive about getting out ahead of this case? So we're going to take a look at how to automate those tasks, the creation of those tasks, how to automate the assignments so that you've got that full team, that collaborative and cohesive approach. You've got that academic advisor, maybe the parent, probably not because I didn't put them in here, but you got that success coach, the academic advisor, the admissions representative, everybody that you need to be working on this case, and then you've got the metrics so you'll be able to tell what's worked and what hasn't worked. So we're going to do that. You're like, yes, Daniela, tell me more. We're going to use our cues to do this. And I will just pull up, I built a low attendance queue and a couple of things that I want to share here. So I believe, yes, in the product roadmap, we talked a little bit about cues, but I'll just do a synopsis here. These are, this is your, oh goodness, how do I want to say this? Your to-do list, essentially, that's dynamic. And like Eric said, it's really built to build out your processes that you have to repeat over and over again, right? So you know what you have to do to get the student back on track for student success. Don't build it over and over again. Build it one time and make it work for that student segment. So in this case, we've got the main task here. The first one is to meet with the advisor, right? And you can see who it's been assigned to, the due date, all of your typical, assigned students, all of your typical stuff. What I really like here is this description part. So say you've got a new team member, right? Or say somebody comes in at 10 o'clock and you've logged in at 1 a.m. or when you've logged in at 9 a.m. the next day for work. What am I supposed to do in this meeting with this student? You can fill out this description and tell your team member, hey, I want you to meet to review the student's academic record, to understand any underlying issues or challenges that may be, obstructing their success or their attendance record. So you don't even have to tell your team member, this is what this meeting is for, right? It's all built in for them. They can go ahead and get started and reach out to that student right away. So that's a nice thing. I also love the notes section. So after you've met with that student, you can share notes. Hey, we uncovered that these are the obstacles that this student is facing. Here's a next step we talk about. Here's what we recommend. And then lastly, you can add your subscribers, which is really nice. So I am the first step in this plan, right? But I want to include that success coach. I want to include maybe the faculty member or anybody else who's invested in this student and needs to know what's happening. You can add them as a subscriber and they can follow along on this task. The other thing I want to share is, and Eric hinted at this earlier in the product roadmap too, is this idea of subtasks or grouping smaller tasks under a larger one. So one of the steps here is to develop and implement an improvement plan. That's a big task, right? Like, what does that mean? And that maybe requires a lot of people. So we've built out some subtasks underneath that large task that breaks down what it looks like. And you can automate these assignments. You can automate the work that goes into this so that hey, student is at step 7. We're ready to develop and implement a plan. Let's kick off the series of actions that needs to happen so that we can get them back on track, and you can assign those so you can really start working smarter and earlier and more proactively.
Yeah, that's really cool, because one of the things that it's not there right now, but we're working on adding. You don't want to create these tasks over and over again, so we're automating them from workflows, right? So all of these tasks can be now set up in workflows. They can be assigned to the advisor or whoever. We also have introduced a round robin component to assigning tasks in workflows, so you can kind of do that as well. And the other part that's important here that we have heard feedback from is, okay, we have this templatized way of setting up a case. We have this subtasks and we have a main task. I just want to set that up as a template and now be able to use it in a workflow, so I don't have to recreate that over and over. I can just hit that one button and create all those things at the same time. So that's coming, but right now you can actually do what Daniela just showed you is all live and available for you, but we're improving that use case as well to make it a lot easier for the creation of these.
There's also a task dashboard too, I just want to point out, so you can track like your team if they're completing those tasks and how long it takes them to complete those tasks. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, in that case, it was case management, right? So it was
Yes.
like, yeah. So you can, by type, by segment, you can kind of filter all those things out based on that. So that's all the presentation. Hopefully they give you, what? Yes.
Yes.
So we're going to go directly
It's
into
time for
Q&A.
Time for questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody have any? We just blew their minds. Yes, Herb. Herb's got a question.
I'm not sure who Herb is, but I saw.
Oh, did you have one? Oh, sorry. He was the first one I saw. Go ahead. Does Courtney have one? Oh, got it.
I heard you mention, and maybe I misunderstood, that you built in where you could record a message, phone message.
You can send, yes, you can call students through Element, yes.
Okay, set up automatic phone calls? Or let's say for groups of students, let's say you have a group of students that are supposed to be attending orientation and you want to set up a phone call in that flow just as a reminder.
We don't recommend phone calls. I never answer my phone. So the only thing that I respond to is through text messages. So highly recommend not spamming people with phone calls. Highly, highly recommend it. Send a text message. It's much more effective, and you can send multiple, and you can actually send them to a link, which is much better than actually having all the information in there. But we don't have the robocalling. I guess that's probably what you're referring to. And the reason for that is that, yes, it can be effective in some cases, but we really don't feel like it's kind of industry best practice.
Thank you very much. I have two questions. The first relates to student success. One of the things that, having had a couple of students in college, they have really found instructors, professors who they really bonded with. Is there a way to provide sort of like an accountability partner rather than a parent, a professor, faculty member, staff member that would be getting those emails and helping out the student?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a really good question. So one of the things so in Element you can do relationships, and in your emails you can actually say, I want to send this email to somebody who is related to this person this way. So you can have a parent-child relationship, you can have a coach, student relationship. You can have different types of relationship between people. As we expand into that student success and bringing the faculty members in there on the advising part, we're also expanding those relationships. So now it's not only just the advisor, like the owner or the assignee of that record, but that is going to expand to have more relationships in there, and exactly for your use case that you're talking about, because that student has a success team rather than just a success coach. Like it's a whole team that's managing them.
The other question, related to that, could the student pick a person? Could they go into their record and say, I want Professor X?
Yeah, so one of we saw a little bit on the vision of our product where we're trying to bring in a student portal to our current students, but also even beyond that. So as we open that student portal up, students now, they're able to look at applications and events and all those things, but they're not ultimately unified in a unified student portal. So as we add that student portal in there, we're going to give them a lot more access to actually pick those settings and pick those abilities and kind of add people in there. So that's a really, really good one, as the student can pick their accountability coach. So that's a good model.
Okay.
I would say now on that form, that check-in form, if you want to ask that question and have them identify like a faculty, like there are workarounds that don't do that exactly, but if you're looking for that student to identify somebody like that, you could get to that in Element today. Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. So I'm always thinking like best case.
He's a visionary.
So you can actually create a custom field and ask that in the form and say, hey, who's your enter the accountability faculty member's email address, and now you can use that as a token in all those emails that go out.
Yeah.
Okay. The second question is related to.
Hey, you said only two.
It was a two-part question. Yeah.
Keep going.
Part of this is tutoring. Is there a way to add some functionality in Element that would allow tutors to be able to go in and do their scheduling, add their notes, and things like that?
Well, that's already in there. So you can bring whoever you want in. So the appointments and appointment types, those are all configurable by you. So whatever population, advisors, tutors, however you think about those support offices, those success offices that are supporting a student, you can all put them in there, and then the student can pick which appointment type that they want and schedule it with that particular person. As we add teams, which is coming a little bit later this quarter, next couple of months, the team's ability, then you can add multiple people to the team, so it's a round-robin approach to that. Yeah.
So I have a question, sorry. If there's notes that are being taken and, the students identified or marked in some way for needing support, students don't always follow the same path back, right?
Yes.
So and inevitably a student, sort of knee deep in everything in the middle of the semester, they'll just sort of call the main college number and try to get through, or think they're asking a generic question, and they've got, all of these things going on in their CRM record. So is there a way to sort of flag that student's record to say, hey, there's a bunch of stuff going on here, and there are notes already taken, or something to highlight that student's record in the CRM to let the folks sort of on that front line staff know, don't touch the student. They really need to talk to person X. Don't give them any other information, but get them to their success coach or whoever.
Yeah, so look, Element is very configurable for different workflows. So you can have perhaps call center representatives that are answering those calls. You can have a very special view of the person's profile, and you can surface certain fields to be in the header. So if you're defining a status, or you have a label on that student, or a custom field that signifies something, you can highlight that at the top so they're actually able to see that right away. Yes. And you can you can bring up the notes cards on the profile so they can see the notes right away.
Yep.
Thank you. Regarding the journeys, so we're in implementation right now, and you showed a lot of things that I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Like packs, you have examples. Will you have possible templates for journeys?
Yeah, we have a few in there, about 4 or 5, okay. But that is an area where we're expanding. So we will, just a few right now. Huge opportunity for us.
Yeah, great idea. Yes.
And can I ask also one about, so we have Starfish.
Yeah.
And you showed some things that we didn't see when we first viewed the product. So now I'm like, okay, and I don't know if you know, or maybe we can have a conversation about that, but like what's missing? Because in my mind, I was like, okay, well, Ellen will eventually get there, and I'll get our academics to switch from Starfish to this product. But I'm curious, like what's maybe missing? Or what you're working on to try to mimic?
That's a different conference.
That's a different
We don't
So one of the things, so we can do a lot of the things that are in the Starfish or Navigate or something similar to that. The only thing that we are a little bit behind those is academic planning, like the journey planning, for example. It's like, hey, this is the classes that you need to take, and here's kind of your path, and so that's something that we took a really hard look and said, look, in order for us to have that portal together, and that's the reason for bringing that portal together and bringing all those pieces. So we are expanding and filling those gaps over the next quarter or two to kind of provide a lot of that functionality in there. But the vision is for the student to have everything that they need in one place.
And we can get courses integrated in different, like
that's there right now.
Yeah, it's a little more manual, but we can do basically what you can do in Starfish, maybe just not as seamlessly at this moment, right? Yeah. And knowing we're going to get there. But yes, we can.
that is, when we talk about vision, like all the stuff that you saw on that roadmap, we said by next Engage, that's what we want to have available. So all of that stuff that you saw, it's by next Engage, and we're going to be releasing things, quarter by quarter, which is quite a fast pace for us, but it's something that we're dedicated to actually meeting that use case. Just the microphone.
I was just saying, if you can do that and get everything into one
Yes.
platform, you
Yes.
will be the saint of higher ed.
Oh, okay.
I'm telling you.
I like that.
Because we are, at this point, using 4 platforms
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
look at records and get students registered.
Yeah.
And it's so time-consuming and overwhelming
Yeah.
and tiring for staff.
Yeah.
And confusing for students.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So by next Engage, I guess we're recording this, so we'll see what happens. All
Any
right.
other questions?
Time for one more question, and then Jacqueline.
Thanks. A little more detail. The notes, do they go into conversations and that's where they reside for those, or is that a separate?
So notes are part of tasks themselves, and we
Okay.
surface them in the notes section. If you go to notes, I think we're bringing task notes in there, and actually notes that you enter in just as a general note as well. So it's the notes card, and you see a history, and it will tell you the type where it came from. So we're aggregating them in the notes section.
Okay. Next question was, a lot of these systems that we're talking about, we're assigning advisors and doing caseload management.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, really simplistic question, but about the assignment of the success teams and the advisors. Is that a manual process? Is that something that you're creating teams? How does that work?
Yeah, so Teams is a big feature that we almost had it, but it's not ready yet. And it's something that we are working on next because it's so fundamental to everything. Right now we have departments which we assign to people, but we're changing that to teams. So you're going to have internal people are going to have a primary team, secondary teams, and then you're going to pick those teams and make them available as anywhere when you can assign a particular person, that's going to be a team, and we can use them internally in workflows as well. We actually have a workflow rule right now for assigning tasks, and we added something where you can actually assign those in a round robin, so you can put a 5 people in there and say, okay, this is for this particular task type, 5 people, and it's going to go round robin, or it's going to look at the task load for those people and say, give the next one to the person who has the least tasks. So that's the management. We need to fine tune it a little bit, but there's a first version of that round robin already.
Yeah, but I would say now using a workflow to automate that assignment is probably your best bet.
Yeah.
Setting that criteria that says if this student meets A, B, C, then it gets assigned to this person, and then using those rotational or balanced rules to say if that person's caseload is full, move it to the next one until they're even. But there is a way to automate it, yes.
Brendan is going to kick us
hovering.
off the stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
No?
Thank you
awesome.
all.
Thank you. So let's hear it for our artist and Daniela.